I want to show you the sound and images of sirens there over Tel Aviv, and the Israeli military says missiles have been launched from Iran into Israel. That information just coming in the last 30 seconds, and it is what had been anticipated, those warnings that had come from the White House, US officials saying there was an imminent threat of an Iranian attack on Israel from Iran. And they warned earlier, that official, that there would be serious consequences if they launched that attack. And of course, all of this as the Middle East has ratcheted up in terms of tension. And of course, last night, Israeli forces moved across the border and started their invasion into southern Lebanon to take on Hezbollah. And of course, Hezbollah, one of Iran's proxies in the region, just like Hamas in Gaza. And at different stages over the last few months, all eyes have been on Tehran in terms of how they might respond. Back in April, of course, they launched a missile and drone strike on Israel, but it had been heavily telegraphed in the days before, and most, if not all, were shot down using Israel's Iron Dome, but also the Americans, the British, helping Israel in their defense. But those are the pictures that are coming in, and apologies that they are so dark and difficult to make up, but there the camera pointing up into the sky as they try to track these missiles. The Axios news agency was reporting about an hour ago that it would be ballistic missiles, not cruise missiles, not drones, that were sent by Iran last time in that April attack. And just in the last 20 minutes, the IDF had yet another briefing warning Israelis to stay close to shelters and to listen to the advice and the warnings that have been issued over the last few hours, warning about the potential of these attacks and saying to people, stay near to the shelters. And that was a warning that also we had heard from the US Embassy, saying to their staff to head to shelters. So all of that had been warned about in the run-up to what we're seeing now, but confirmation that the Israeli military saying missiles have been launched from Iran into Israel. And President Biden, we're hearing, has convened a meeting with the Vice President, Kamala Harris, and their national security team to discuss the Iranian plans to launch an attack against Israel. And this, of course, difficult to make out what exactly it is. Of course, Israel has their Iron Dome, that protective shield that fires up in terms of any sort of missiles or drones that are aimed towards Israel. So Joe Biden convening a meeting with his national security team. We were hearing from Axios that the sorts of missiles that were anticipated, expected, would take about 12 minutes to go between Iran and Israel. And these are the pictures as Israel prepares for those missiles to actually head into their airspace. And of course, the warnings had been that these attacks could be directed widespread right across Israel. There was no particular targeted mentioned in the warnings, but you can see regular flashes in the air as we have word from the Israeli military that those missiles have been launched from Iran into Israel. We have, of course, our correspondents in the region. We will talk to them in the next few moments, but of course, for weeks now and months, there has been a real worry about the escalating tensions in the region. Only today, Antonio Guterres warning, saying we have to avoid an all-out war. And of course, the chances of that were greatly increased after what we've seen in Lebanon over the last 2 weeks, that decapitation strategy, going after the leader of Hezbollah, killing him, Hassan Nasrallah, last Friday. We'd already seen before that the pager attacks, the walkie-talkie attacks in southern Lebanon and Beirut, aimed at so many of the Hezbollah fighters. And then we saw the build-up of Israeli forces on the border before last night and the start of that incursion. And now we have the response that many people had thought might come earlier from Iran, because don't forget, Hezbollah, Hamas, they're proxies in the region. And of course it has been a huge blow to Iran that week by week, month by month, those proxies have been taken out. I'll talk to Frank Gardner, our security correspondent. He is just coming into the studio, so we'll get his thoughts in a moment or two. But we're staying with these live pictures because, as the Israelis have said, the missiles have been launched from Iran into Israel. You can hear the sirens in the background as those warnings sounding out, because, of course, the Israeli authorities saying to citizens, anticipate this, expect this. That's what they've said over the last 2-3 hours. But now it appears, as you can see those explosions just happening, it's very difficult to work out whether we're seeing those ballistic missiles actually striking or whether it's part of the Iron Dome. But Frank Gardner, our security correspondent, is here in the studio with me. Frank, you're looking at these pictures as we are, as our viewers are around the world. Give me your headline thoughts, first of all, as we see one of those explosions at ground level.
This is pretty serious. This is exactly the escalation that almost everyone was trying to prevent, trying to head off. This is why all those countries at the UN last week got together, came up with a ceasefire proposal. For Iran, this has been a really difficult dilemma, because the hawks, who appear to have won the day in the argument, will be saying we cannot simply sit back and watch the systematic dismantling of our closest ally in the region, Hezbollah. They've assassinated the leader, they've taken out the second tier, they've taken out the third tier, they did all the exploding pages. What, we're just going to sit here and let them do this? We look weak. The pragmatists, such as they are, will have said, whoa, hang on, you know, we are not as strong as Israel. They've already proved they can hit the Houthis from nearly 2,000 kilometers away. They've already assassinated Ismail Haniyeh, we think, inside Tehran. How did they do that? They've clearly penetrated our security establishment. If we do something like this, they're going to really hammer us. And now we're going to see the results.
We're watching these pictures, trying to work out how much are the missiles that Iran has sent, how much is the Iron Dome. But I was citing what Axios had reported in the last hour, saying that the Western sources talking to them had said that Iran is expected to attack with ballistic missiles that will reach Israel within 12 minutes, not the drones, not the cruise missiles that happened with the last attacks back in April. So just talk about the type of weaponry that perhaps we're seeing here and whether it is different in terms of the magnitude of the attack from last time around.
Well, we don't know the numbers yet, but when we refer to last time, we're talking about April. So on April the 1st, Israel carried out an airstrike on Iran's consulate in Damascus, which killed several members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. Iran said, we will respond, but they telegraphed it well in advance. About 12 days later, they launched a volley of around 300, a mixed volley of drones, ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. And 99% of these were shot down by not just Israel, but by the US, France, the UK, Jordan, probably the UAE as well. And so it was ineffective. And there was then enormous diplomatic pressure on Israel not to go overboard in responding and start a huge, great big, massive regional war. So Israel responded with a symbolic hit on, it was tiny, but it hit a facility near Isfahan, showing Iran that it could hit its nuclear facilities if it chose. But then came the July the 31st assassination in, well, first of all, there was the assassination in Beirut of Fouad Shukr, the number 2, the military commander in Hezbollah, an Iranian ally, followed by July the 31st, the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. And Iran vowed revenge for that. So they've had their finger kind of on the trigger ever since July the 31st. Now they are watching the systematic dismantling of Hezbollah by their avowed enemy, Israel, and there will be enormous pressure on them to respond, and this appears to be their response, which could be extremely damaging potentially to Israel, but also to Iran.